There's nothing there for
Yeah.
years, no kidding.
Yeah, no, I wasn't
No, mine
saying.
more than double.
Hey,
I'm just saying there's
everyone's
nothing.
You don't have to go. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We're going to be starting out with the tax rate hearing this evening, but one of our documents that we're going to be turning in is titled for 6 p.m., so we just want to make sure that we allow anyone who wants to have a chance to come and give a comment to be here at 6 o'clock. So we're going to just be waiting just a couple of minutes on that avenue as we go on to. So I am going to maybe start us off with the pledge so we can get that out of the way so we go into the open session. And then we'll be going on to the tax hearing, and then we'll be going to the regular board meeting agenda. So if you'll stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. So moving along, I'm going to start with just a little bit of information over the tax hearing document. To let you all know, the tax rate has been 2.83 that we have had and been working with 28316 actually completely with all the extra numbers. We are told by the government through the state of Missouri what we can raise or change that rate to. The highest we could raise that rate this year would be 2.8335, just to let you all know, which would generate a little bit of extra revenue, but not a lot of extra revenue within the town. Taxes are always a touchy subject. This amount of tax change is a very minuscule amount and a minor amount of money for us to be looking forward to change to kind of raise this rate, in my opinion. So I will allow the other board members to have a little discussion about this as they'd like to, and then I'm going to open up for comments as we approach the 6 o'clock time in the next minute or two. So.
Do we have specific language for the motion?
Yes, there is specific language. It was in our board document, and I will pull that up as well. Does anyone have any comments about the tax rate or the possible increase of roughly .0019? Exactly.
I mean, .0019 is still I mean, it's still an increase. It would still benefit us, and I mean, we've got a lot of things that we need. Our employees need things. Like, I don't know if we have an opportunity to get $1. I'm not sure that it's worth saying it's not worth it, in my opinion.
It actually is a few more than $1. The calculations come out to roughly $200,000.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's a significant number.
It is.
Well, we're going to see an increase too in the personal property taxes. They did a revision on them, so they're higher. If we leave the rate the same, we'd still get an increase in income from that.
But if we did both, then we get that increase. We get both increase. I mean,
So those revised amounts will reflect, and there will be a slight difference there. So if you look at the .0835, that would be compared to last year's .8316. So it is a pretty minuscule difference because that is adjusted with the approved levies with the assessed valuations this year. Because this wasn't what do they call that, a reassessment year, I think that's every other year, there would have been I think it would have been a lot larger debate. There could have been another penny on the table, but I think without having been a lot more discussion out in the open and with the new administration and everything, we're really should be able to feel comfortable to say to our taxpayers that we're adjusting because of the current tax year estimated evaluations at the approved voter levy and state minimum. So I don't think we would have to defend too much, and if there were a change to discuss, it's not the full .0835, which is estimated at 180,000. It's the difference between, think about it as 835 and 316. So about 0.5 difference, half of a percent. Pretty insignificant difference. One difference there is that in the past, you guys have put the full levied amount, so your actual levy motion language is 283 as it had been previously. That is, no, that's correct. Okay, 283 last year, 283 this year. You're getting into the decimal points of it. What was my point? We put some into capital projects, Fund 4, as I reference it a lot. I'm saying capital projects if I say Fund 4. That is because, and I don't have an exact amount to tell you, but you only get matched by federal dollars in Fund 4 for what you put there from the federal level, and that's coming from pipeline and railroads. And since we get in Fund 1 already at a state level, something like $1 million a year, I won't be able to tell you till the end of this year what that produces. But at $180,000 estimated in Fund 4, I would hope we might. I mean, if we get $5,000, it's worth it to give that a try and see. So.
And so that goes with the motion of actually making sure that we actually denote putting those into the different funds as well, and not just putting it into Fund 1 as we have done prior.
Correct.
Isn't that pipeline money going to go away sometime in the near future?
I am not certain about that. I'd have to look into that and find out.
I thought I'd heard that somewhere, but you know, when we get into these things, I get overwhelmed, so.
I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't have a sunset. I think that's common, but I'd have to do some homework and let you know.
Yeah, I thought we discussed it at one point in time, that it was gonna go away.
Is there any other further discussion from the board?
Brian, move your phone off the mic. Thank you.
I'm going to now open this up for public comment if there's anyone present that would like to speak about the tax rate before we decide to set. Good evening, Mr. Wright. How you doing? He's such a nice smiling face out there. He's been in school all day long, and he's still smiling at the end of the day. So I saw a lot of happy Facebook posts, and didn't see anybody come running out of school today. So I think the day's been pretty much a success. I know Mr. Pettit said he had rounded out a lot of the buildings in the district today, so I can imagine what he did for 6 hours of his day as he probably traveled the great map of Marshall today.
Mr. Ranky and I actually raced. We started at opposite ends to see, and I don't know who officially won.
The boss always wins, right?
That's right.
Even if he didn't win. So, all right, hearing no comments, go ahead, ma'am.
I move to set the tax rate at 283 as allowed by Amendment 2, Mo Constitution, Article 10, Section 11B.
Second.
Is that the full language that you need?
Yes, that is. Is there any more discussion? 283, is that 28335 or 28316?
Oh,
Because there are extra numbers with
The
that.
language just had.
The higher would be 28335 is what we talked about, and that would give us just a slightly different revenue of about 200,000 spread amongst the community, which would be very small to each person.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
Oh, you're fine.
As amended, the 28335.
Okay.
You approve this?
Keep my
Still for the
second,
second?
yes.
All right. I'm going to do this by a roll call vote.
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
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 And I as well. We will be setting the tax rate at 2.8335 with 2.75 going to our first fund, and then a balance going as well to Fund 4. So, thank you all. I'm going to adjourn from the regular, from the tax meeting, if I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
Okay.
If you're done.
All right. Harry?
Aye.
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 And I. And now I need a motion for us to open regular session for our meeting this evening.
So moved.
Well, wait, are we
already-
doing?
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
approved
I'm sorry. I usually just bang the gavel and open that up, so I'm sorry. 2 meetings in one tonight, so. Next, we're going to move down to the approval of the consent agenda because I did do the pledge already as well. So the consent agenda entails having the minutes of the July 26th regular board meeting and August 8th special board meeting, August bills, and that number looks like the amended number that we had today in our packet of $782,256.42. The financial reports that were included, the approval of the annual secretary of the board report. That was a very detailed 25-page read over there. Is it 28? So there were a lot of numbers, even for a guy that likes numbers and likes to read numbers. There were a lot of numbers in there for me to read through. So I applaud you on turning that in. And that has always been approved and been sent back to us in the past, and I expect nothing different this year. We also need to amend the copy machine contract for the replacements of 2 machines at the high school and 1 machine at the tutor house as well.
So what's going on with the RICO contract? What's the story there?
So that is to replace our copy machines for the 2 that were deemed a loss in the high school fire. So basically, to buy out the contract, which you should see in the bills, for one of the copier machines was $5,537.52. The other was $4,088.52. The insurance is covering that buyout. So then we just had to get 2 more copy machines, and we just put them on our current lease. Our original current lease was 60 months. So these will be leased for 36 months. So everything in the district will expire at the same time. So it actually,
And the tutor house.
so the tutor house, that's going to be an addition, but it's not going to be money-wise addition. They don't have anything really in the tutor house, and they need a little bit more capabilities with what they're doing there as far as copying and using that. So basically, with the 2 new copier machines, we are going to pay $40 less a month on that contract. That's how he worked it. And then the new tutor house one, for the remainder of the time, will be about $34 a month. So with adding that, with adding the tutor house one and having the 2 new ones to go on the lease, we're actually saving a little bit of money. So
About $6 a month.
$6 a month.
And since there's been a little reconfiguration change within central office with the Director of Teaching and Curriculum and of Special Services moving out to the tutor house and bringing a few more administrative support staff back into the central office, then they do need a little bit more capability with printers, and that's where he was alluding to as well, so.
So it's all Laura's fault.
We can blame it on Grace because I don't see her in the attendance for tonight. So, I'm seeking a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Extra questions?
Make a motion, we approve consent agenda. Second.
Is there more discussion?
I just want to say thank you for sending the receipts along with the bills, seeing what's in compared to what's out. It was-
I did have that comment as well. Thank you, Matt, for bringing that up. It was very good seeing that. Jack, did it balance out good enough for you there?
Yes. What'd you say?
Did it balance out the deposits with the expenditures better for you that way? So we got a much better financial picture, I know, so. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda as it's been motioned and seconded, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Next, I'm looking for adoption of the rest of the regular agenda as listed, and I believe there are no additions this evening.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Moving now, we have public comments. So if there's any comment that we'd like to have, we will pause again for comments regarding the agenda or any other topics that are near and dear to your heart for anyone here this evening. Seeing no motion, I'm going to move past public comments for the evening, and I'm going to invite Mr. Dwayne Martin from Ed Council up to speak with us a little bit about handbooks. So I believe he has a presentation as well that will be shown behind you, it appears.
rattle a little bit. This is the first board meeting I've been to in probably 6 months.
We also televise our meetings, so we're going to ask you to speak into a microphone
But
so
are
it's
they?
broadcast.
Is it?
Yes, we've.
Oh. Good to know.
Much better?
He will turn your gain up and we'll go from there, sir, but thank you. A quiet attorney, we're working with this here tonight, sir.
Absolutely. A couple things I would say. First of all, this is the first board meeting I've been to in about 6 months that we didn't have public comments. So I take that as
That's
actually
nice.
a good sign, actually. It really is. I'm going to talk with you about a number of things tonight, but I just wanted to make some introductory comments because I haven't had the privilege of being before you before. My name is Dwayne Martin, and I'm an owner and partner of Ed Counsel, which is a law firm. We represent about 240 of Missouri's 518 public school districts. So we're all around the state. We have about 4 offices: Columbia, St. Louis, Independence, and Springfield. I actually live about 20 miles from here on a farm, but it's kind of a nice central location to get to all of those places. What I want to talk to you about tonight is handbooks. I know that's the topic that you have for us. But as we do that, I would like to try to engage you a little bit to find out a little bit more about what you're interested in doing, why you want to talk about handbooks, and what we can do for you, and dial it in a little bit better to find out the scope of what you're really asking us to do. To do that, I think we probably ought to start with big picture. And I know you guys, through your board training and everything, you talk about policy making being one of the primary functions of the board. And you hear that to, everything, but I thought I would bring us back to, because we seldom look at the actual statutory authority that gets us to that point. It makes it clear under the law that the school board of each school district in the state shall make all needful rules and regulations. Doesn't even mention the word policies. It talks about rules and regulations. And it's the board that makes them for the governance and operation of the school district. I think that's a good place to start, because as we look at that from a big picture point of view, sometimes we get inside into all of our policies and everything, kind of get lost in it. That's really a primary function of the board, is making rules and regulations. It doesn't really talk about the authority of the administration to make rules and regulations, but as you know, on your policies that you have in place right now, the board delegates a lot of authority to do that very thing. That kind of gets us to the conversation about handbooks, because the handbooks really aren't adopted by you under your current policy and your current system. And so we're going to talk about that and the interplay with the administration and how you articulate your rules and how you go about making the regulations as a school district. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. There are differing systems out there for how you promulgate your rules and regulations. Some of you may be aware, or you may not be aware, that Ed Counsel has its own policy service. That's something that we started several years ago. To step back from that, actually, we had a number of different services that were part of the school law firm, because we don't do anything but represent public school districts. We actually got involved in superintendent searches and governance planning. And Dr. Jim Henson was actually a part of Ed Counsel. We split that off a couple years ago and formed a nonprofit. We left the Ed Counsel Guide Service, the policy service, with the law firm just because it is so law intensive going through all of the rules and regulations, so we really couldn't do that. So that's the only piece that we have still left in the law firm besides doing legal work. Now, I have MPS current just because that's kind of where you're at in terms of your MSBA policies. And I just want to explain that there are different systems and different approaches, only because you may want to borrow some of those things. As you're scoping what you want us to do with your handbooks, you may look at it and say, well, maybe we can borrow from this or that and try to put it together. Here are a couple things I would say. Under your current system, the board adopts the policies and regulations. That's what you do. And technically, the administrative procedures really aren't adopted by the board, although we do have some administrative procedures that sometimes get adopted by the board and we have this debate, and, MSBA says you can or you don't have to. So I'm not sure where you're at on each of your administrative procedures, but typically that would be deferred to the administration. Really, what's contemplated under the MSBA policies, if you look at the language, it talks about policies and regulations being adopted by the board. And it even says that when we're talking about regulations, they're going to be treated as policies. So it's pretty much one and the same, okay? I know there are lots of terminology. Now, when you look at it, MSBA is in the position of really writing those policies and making those rules for 518 Missouri public school districts. That's what they do. And, so they're not really tailored for the individual school district because they have to try to make something that works in terms of language for the very large districts as well as the very small. And so that's one thing you have to kind of take into account as you look at your policies, and you have to decide, is this a Marshall Public Schools policy, or is this something that we just, want to go with the boilerplate that's all around the state? They are written around the legal requirements. MSBA does a good job of capturing the legal requirements. One of the complaints that I hear about the MSBA policies is they probably do too good a job of capturing the legal requirements, and we end up with 13 pages of policy that includes a lot of stuff that really isn't a policy statement. That's one of the reasons why we started our own policy service, and it's a different system altogether. I just kind of want to explain this a little bit. We have basically 5 components, and the reason why I want to explain this is because you may want to borrow some of these pieces and try to put together a system from Marshall Public Schools. Even if you keep the MSBA policies for long term, there may be some things here that you can kind of pull into what you do. District policies is one. Then we've got student parent handbooks. We're going to talk about that. An employee manual, or maybe more than one employee manual. Some districts do support staff manual and some plus a professional staff manual. Then you have an administrative manual and a board manual. So as we look at what you've got on the books right now, currently, you have student parent handbooks for these different entities. Now, we have one for all of elementary, and then we have Northwest, middle school, high school, the Career Center, and an athletic handbook. Those are the student parent handbooks that you have. What I would say is that there are some opportunities to maybe kind of revamp how we're doing this a little bit so that there's more uniformity and consistency across the district and some efficiencies there. If you look at it from a parent point of view, right now, and I'm not trying to be too critical, but if you broke out those 6 handbooks, you'd see a lot of differences in how it's presented, the information. So, and if you're really looking at parent accessibility or student accessibility to the rules, because that's the whole point really of the handbooks, is to communicate your rules and regulations. Well, we've got some work that we could be doing there. I think there are opportunities for us. Now, there are a couple of different things that I want to point out as you look at this. And this goes to scoping it a little bit for us if you want us to do some work for you on your handbooks. It's actually relatively straightforward to do what would be legally compliant. We do a red line of what you've got on the books and just kind of say, okay, well, we've got to add this or subtract this, and include notices. That's a huge issue for public school districts because we are charged through the federal government and the state government to put our parents on notice of certain things every year. And frankly, a lot of districts aren't doing all of the notices that they need to be doing, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you roll that into a student parent handbook, it's at least all in one place. And that's something that's pretty important to a lot of our parents, I think. Needs to be aligned to your board policies. This is where we get into a little bit of debate about how this might work or should work. And it goes to the issue that I was talking about with the board adopting the handbooks. Under your MSBA board policies, you don't adopt handbooks. Basically what it says is that the handbooks are put before you each year if you want to, just for informational purposes. But it's the administration's responsibility to develop the handbooks and approve them, okay? Now, where that leads to some difficulties is if you don't have that alignment between that content in your handbooks and what's on the books for your board policies. Common area would be, for example, your disciplinary code, which we are required to give to parents each year. Because we're required by statute to give that to the parents and the student each year, well, that's our disciplinary code that we should be giving, right? And it should be the same as our board policy, right? Because that's what the board's approved. Well, over the years, what tends to happen is there's drift. And your disciplinary code in the handbook reads differently than your board policies. And because of that, it can create the opportunity for people to make arguments about, well, basically they just select which one they like and they make the argument. Okay, well, the handbook is what we're going with because that's what we were given and you're required to give it to us each year. Or they like the board policy language better and they say, well, it's the board policy that you're bound to because that's what the board approved. You see how that can lead to rubs. So one of the things that I consider to be legally critical in terms of a handbook review would be that alignment with board policies and making sure that it does match up in all those respects. Now, there are some other things that you can do that are very helpful, and frankly, this is borrowing a lot from our EGS system, but we like to put it together so that basically our system is built around the idea that it's the promulgation of the rules for each stakeholder group. Whether it's student parents, whether it's employees, it's a single source document that you can go to, and here's what you need. And if you think about it, that's kind of like the way it works in the corporate world, right? I mean, you don't have corporate policies that people really refer to. They refer to employee handbooks, employee manuals. And we have kind of lined it up the same way here. It is very difficult when you have lengthy policies that are really heavily dependent on the legal requirements to make them accessible, readable, understandable for our parents and our employees. So that's one of the challenges that you have. Also, notice over here, I didn't even talk about alignment to actual practices. And just installing the EGS system, one of the things that we have found universally is that when we sit down with a team of the administrative team for the district, we start to get inside some of these issues of, okay, how's this really working? Does it align up with the board policies? Does it? And we find that there are about 20 different practices going on, some not even consistent within the buildings, and then among buildings, it's even worse. So if you think about it, that doesn't really make sense if you are responsible for promulgating the rules and regulations for a district, right? I mean, it should be something that, granted, your building leaders should have some authority to do some things in terms of making it their own, but there certainly should be some consistency on some baseline rules. And that's where we end up with issues because the same parent, and you may have siblings, one's in middle school, one's in high school, and we have a lot of disparity in what the rules are. And yeah, you make adjustments for grade level groupings. Don't get me wrong, age appropriateness is something you take into account, but it just doesn't seem to make any sense to our parents. And so it leads to sometimes a lack of trust, and sometimes it's some other issues as well. Like I said, you want to make it grade level appropriate. You want to make it consistent across the buildings and covering building specific needs. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about what at least I've been able to learn, and I would certainly turn to the administration, and if you guys call me out if I'm wrong on this, but I was only able to find 2 current, and I say current, handbooks. Right now, we have a classified staff handbook that I saw that was labeled 1819, and then we had a workers' comp handbook that was labeled about the same period. And then I did not find a professional staff handbook online, at least, so I'm not sure where we are there. But my recommendation to you would be either you have an employee handbook that's for everybody, or break it down, support staff and professional staff. I find that works really well, because if you think about your current board policies, you have a number of different, in Section G, you've got all of those policies that relate to professional staff members, and then you have a whole bunch of other policies that relate to support staff members, and it's kind of nice to target it to each group and make it clear, because the rules tend to be a little bit different. And frankly, the benefits do in a lot of districts as well, so something to think about. Right now, and I mentioned this, that one of the components is a board manual. Right now, what you really have is basically your Section B of your policies that kind of go through governance and how that works for the board. What we have done with our EGS system that we've gotten a lot of really, really positive feedback on is we've put together board manuals that they're a single source document for our board members. You know, the governance types of policies. I noticed that you had on your agenda board norms a little bit later. That would be worked in there. How you're going to evaluate the superintendent. What are the communication protocols with the superintendent? What are the communication protocols among board members? What are the rules for individual board member conduct? What are the expectations? How do we deal with that? What are the roles of our leaders? And if you have that in a single board manual, as new board members come on, you've got, okay, here's how we do it. And because there's so much that you really don't pick up on, it takes a couple of years to really kind of understand some of those internal board operations. Please.
So
Finally, somebody.
No, you're fine. We're alive, we've got a poll, we're very
Okay,
interested.
okay.
Because we've been talking about this for a long time, you and I have been talking about this for a long time, the president and I. When I was board president, it was clear to me that we needed onboarding. So would that be part of the board manual, something that shows new board members, not only new board members, here's kind of what your timeline for getting into the groove of being on the board is, but also officers?
Yes.
That would be included?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's really up to you guys, really, when it comes down to
What we need help
it, in
with?
terms of
Yeah.
what goes in there. Now, Mr. Pettit can kind of talk to you a little bit about what we include in the EGS one, but we include things like, just some things are materials that we've put together specifically for that purpose. Just to give you a concrete example, we have a chart that includes everything that is required to be approved by the Board of Education by law.
Beautiful.
It doesn't exist anywhere else. You'd think it's those kinds of things.
It would be, a little
And-
timeline. Here's when we do things. This is when we
Just-
approve, this is when we do the tax levy thing. This is when we do the,
And so you don't have those new board members at sea, but also it's a quick reference guide for our senior
Exactly.
folks too.
Yep.
I mean, it's there.
So if somebody else takes over the presidency, vice presidency, treasurer, then all that person has to do is say, let me flip in the manual to the page so I know what's coming up. And if we need to change when things get reported, talk to the superintendent, start that conversation.
that'd be
But it's
nice.
right there.
That-
Okay.
Wouldn't
I just
that be
wanted to make
nice?
sure.
Yes.
And I tell you what I have found, and I'm sure you have too, just with your experience on it. But what I have found is that sometimes, Mr. Jakes may run things a particular way because, it's the best that he sees at the time to do it. He doesn't have that reference necessarily. But then when he does it, because of the situation that's before him, other board members are like, well, why is he doing it that way? And that's a hypothetical. I don't know anything, Brian. I'm just saying.
That probably happens.
Common my experience is
Yeah,
what
it
I'm
happens.
saying. So it's one of those things. And this is an opportunity for the board as a part of, maybe a retreat, workshop, to kind of pull it together and say, okay, this is the way we're going to operate. This is what we need to do. And if we need to revisit it, we need to revisit it. Those are the kinds of opportunities. Okay, I have listed out, just based, coming into the meeting cold, not knowing what you guys were thinking, some potential for the scope of the work. And on the student parent handbooks, there probably needs to be some work just based on what I reviewed. And that can look a number of different ways. It could be just simply that legal compliance kind of thing and the redlining, but it could also be an opportunity. And I find this very, very helpful when you have a transition in administration. Just sitting down and talking about what our practices really are. Otherwise, those conversations, it's a forced conversation, but otherwise, a lot of times, those conversations don't take place. And it's a chance for more of a comprehensive review of a lot of different things. I think that would be healthy by grade level grouping and, getting our administrative teams together and making sure that we do have some level of alignment from one building to the next. Because again, that parent interface is gonna be looking at it, okay, well, why is it this way for my one kid here and completely different for a kid over here? So those are some opportunities. I do like that the elementary, we've got an elementary book, because in a lot of districts I've gone into, what's happened is that I get there and they'll have 6 elementaries and every single one of them's operating off of a different handbook, different page. So, we've got some good things going on. Otherwise, there are some other pieces. As you can imagine, the Career Center and athletic handbooks, they're gonna be a little bit different, and that's gonna take some work there. Employee handbooks, I would really like to see, at some point put together, and I would like to see 2, because I just find that works best. Support staff and professional staff, and that's a good way to break it down. And then I think it would be good to do board manual if you guys are interested in that. That's an opportunity too, for you guys.
Mr. Martin, I'm going to ask you a question for the board, and this would be relevant too. So the board had approved and just recently completed, in fact, we don't have our final report yet, but we had done a risk assessment audit by our own choosing to go through our processes. And then we had just recently had in the month of July, towards the end of July, our regular audit. And both of those have said that we really need an internal controls manual that talks about basically money handling and those processes. Would you say that belongs in or outside of an employee manual, just out of curiosity?
And I think there could be some generalized procedures that everybody needs to have knowledge of. That would be a component of
Relevant
that,
there.
Mr. Pratt.
Okay.
But I also think we probably need a separate manual that gets into the details, that breaks it down on some of those controls. That's more of an inner circle of folks that have that.
Okay.
And, that generalized, those internal controls, there's a certain amount of that all employees, at least all leaders are going to need to know about.
Yeah.
But then there's another level of, kind of the nitty gritty that may not be applicable. That would be my first blush.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I've given you some ideas. In my discussion with Mr. Pettit, what we talked about is, obviously, we're at the beginning of the school year. You're not going to want to go in and change your handbooks like today. Not my recommendation anyway. So we've got some time to process this and think about how you want to handle it. And maybe even one of the front burner things would be a board manual, because there's more flexibility with that in terms of you guys. But student parent handbook, we're going to want to articulate that at the beginning of the next school year, if that's what you're doing. I would say the same thing for your employee manuals. You're going to want that at the beginning of the school year. So there's not a lot of pressure to, we don't have an action item that I feel like we need to, but I wanted to have this conversation with you so we could start talking about scoping this, and maybe, is there an opportunity to collaborate with you guys on this thing?
Sure.
Questions, please.
One of the large questions that's always on any kind of board idea is budget. So I assume you've probably got some kind of overview of kind of how that practice would look. I assume you would go through all of our policies, procedures, you would interview our staff, and see how those work on a ground level, as well as making sure they're aligned with policies, suggest to us if we need to change policies or revisit them. And then I get the financial information that is just came during here to review of what that actually are, the scope of that actually would look like.
And what I did on this was just, like I said, coming into the meeting cold, not knowing what you guys might be interested in, what you might not be interested in. I put together some numbers for you, just so you have some ideas. I think that those are conservatively high numbers, Mr. Jakes. I think that we're probably talking about efficiencies there. In particular, if we start like combining some of those handbooks, that sort of thing, there's a real opportunity to do something less. But we're talking about a turning time on it, and that's why it's estimated at that. And just so you know that what I did is I took our lowest hourly rate, which is $190 an hour, and multiplied it out by those numbers that you have in there, and you can kind of see what that might look like. Now, on the board manual, I'll be honest with you, because it includes like a workshop of working with it,
Right.
through that with you, we're gonna spend more time than what I've estimated there, but we're not gonna charge you more than that 5 hours. Okay, so-
Just for those of you all curious about what numbers we're actually talking about, I did a little quick math. It's going to range somewhere around between 4,200 and around 8,500, and that would be low to high. So, and depending on the range of hours, as he said, there's a leeway of about 3 hours he gave as far as windows of what it would take to work on each handbook or time. So,
Yeah, me too.
What'd you put on it?
As I said, I think there's some
62.
opportunities there.
I've got, I mean, I thought 9,000.
I'm sorry.
No.
I think there's some
That's where I take from
opportunities
that.
there, in particular if we combine like the student parent handbooks, to collapse some of that, to get to, because if it's uniform language that we're using district-wide on a lot of that stuff, that cuts a lot of that time down.
oh,
So-
and you're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, I don't
Right.
mean it completely, but you have other experience with other districts, and there's things that you would suggest that we may or may not have in there. So,
We need to align these handbooks. We've definitely felt that way. The majority of us have had kids or taught in different buildings and had opportunities to have people and in the different buildings at the same time. And we need to align things. We've also had experiences that have encouraged us to bring this to the table at this point, unfortunately. And so we have to learn from the past, in my opinion. It does appear to me, am I wrong, that this is an action item?
Yeah.
yes, it is.
It is.
It
yeah.
is. The
So-
line just goes down a
And
little
I'm
bit
sorry,
farther.
Ms. Lance.
That's
Oh,
okay.
it is.
I just didn't want the board to feel pressure.
Right.
to-
No, I don't feel pressured, but I do feel like it's something that we don't need to be putting off. I think that our kids and our families are important, and they need to know that we are working constantly to better their experiences here. And I think that, in my opinion, I would move that we accept this with the understanding that we could be, maximum we could be is 8,500, and get this service going so that you can be working with our administration and get this rolling so that we're not coming into the spring in a huge rush when we have other things going on.
Because time falls apart pretty quick.
Just for clarity's sake, I'm also going to say we also asked for a bid from Gwen Mundorf, who we also are using for legal counsel. The ask was sent out at the same time of both groups. One group that we already have a working relationship with, which is not Ed Counsel, who chose not to be here this evening, and another group, and just basically, Mr. Pettit said they just emailed him their proposal just within minutes after our meeting started as well this evening. And we have talked to them. I've actually even talked to them this week. So, and then a gentleman who we do not have a relationship with, and I thank you for taking time to come and work with us and explain this out to us. We've had a very good experience, I believe, from all the board members of working with the EGL side of your group and Dr. Henson as well. So just wanted to say that out loud during the discussion points. I do agree with Ms. Lance that, we are constantly working and trying to be vigilant. We've talked a lot about handbook and discipline alignment. That's how we got some of the changes into the books even for this year, of making sure that our alignment, our practices between maybe middle school and high school were a lot more the same. And then, as you said, a few years ago, we still had separate handbooks to our elementaries, and then they moved to put those all together. So I think there is a great value in some of the words that you've talked tonight and some of the actions that we'd like to have as a board. So the fact of having a board manual would be possibly also a great improvement for onboarding. I know Jack and I met, nothing personal against me or Jack, but I am not a manual. And there's things that he's going to come up with at
Really?
different times of the night. I am not a manual,
Oh.
no. Hey? But I'm not available at 11 o'clock at night either, when he might have a question, or possibly after he gets off the course at 10 o'clock in the morning. So there are different times that we could all use that reference as well. And and to
Well,
know
and
kind
this
of where to
board
look
will
for
have
those.
change in April. So we will have new people coming on in April. So, you know, to make that a priority, I think that's a very good,
Yeah, that's true, to start from there.
get moving on, so that's completed and ready to go when the election is done and the new people come on the board.
And I would agree 100% to have something for, I'm the newest member on the board. And,
But the smartest.
no,
Most charming.
some kind of a manual for the new members would be wonderful. Another comment I would make is, I tried to read one or two of those manuals, and I thought, why do they have to be 150 pages long? Use the KISS method in those things. There was
wish
so
that
much
was-
repetition in there that I just,
And contradictions.
I couldn't believe it, you know. You know the KISS method.
So,
There are some other acronyms that we both probably
Yes.
I know you could do it better
Well, and I
than,
think we also have, it, and I think probably all boards do it, we have a habit of putting something off to contemplate, and then everything just hits you all at once, and next thing you know, it's first day of school. So,
Well, that was gonna be my question too, was like, okay, so if we put this off, for what purpose? Like, what, is there more fact
I mean,
finding
if we're gonna do it, why
No, I think we move. In my opinion, we would
Well, you
move
already
and
moved.
let them work.
I
I
thought
mean,
got a
you already,
second.
you already did.
Yeah.
Thought you
You're
did
right.
move, and I
We're
seconded,
discussing.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're still in discussion.
we just
That's
saved
fine.
$60 on the copiers a year.
There we go. That, and we
thought
set
it
the
was-
tax
I thought it
levy,
was
so I think we've got it covered. This is important.
8,000, how much left to go to make up for it?
so.
Yeah, we're good.
So it has been moved and seconded. There is discussion that's been going on. Are we satisfied with our discussion as a
Yeah,
body?
call a question, Brian.
Well, hold on. Let me, there,
Oh,
I feel
you
a
don't-
question hanging out in the back of my mind. But it's something like this. So the actual scope of the work might change in the process, right? So what we're seeing here is sort of like from the current vantage, this might be how it ends up. But it could be that we end up with a very, not a very different, but a different sort of schema, a different set of handbooks, and we are at least probably going to end up with a different model, a different sort of theory of how we approach the creation of the promulgation of these handbooks. Does that, have I understood what you've proposed here?
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. What I would say is this, and those numbers are put together with the idea, because I know you guys don't know me, but I'm very big on, under-promising and over-delivering. And that's kind of the angle that I come at these things. So if we start to look at, okay, it's an adjustment in scope, even if it's still going to be within that 8,500, we're going to come back to you and make sure that you guys are still, okay, you're okay with where we're going.
Yeah, sure. I'm less concerned with the dollar amount. I'm sure that, if it becomes problematic, we'll have that conversation. I'm less concerned about that and more concerned with, what I'm hearing is, we're going to end up with something that works for us, and it's going to be kind of white glove. We're going to be working with you very closely in developing not only how we do these handbooks, but which handbooks we end up with.
The caveat I would add to that, and this just kind of goes to the heart of why we started a separate service, is that you have some policies on the books that are, very cumbersome, and there's a lot of legalese there. And to cut through that and really get it to the point where it is KISS, that's where you're talking about attorney time and refining a lot of that. So I want to make sure we're on the same page, because a lot of times what we'll do is, and we have the capability of doing this, is just put a hyperlink in the handbook, so that electronically, when they're looking at that handbook, they can go to the full policy. But as you capture that summary of the policy, you've got to be very careful that it is not inconsistent in any way, and it covers what has to be really kind of presented in terms of notice in the first instance. And so there's some work there.
Well, and I would like to mention too, so that people understand, I think that something that will be feedback is we don't have people in district that can write good policy or good handbooks, or, why don't we lay on them? And I hope that the community would understand that we don't want to lay any more on them. We want them to be good teachers and good educators at this point in time in the school year, and we can focus with someone that does this every day, and we can realign from new administration and people in new positions and things. I think things get muddy person to person and, practice to practice, and this kind of brings us back and realigns us. And I feel like that's kind of what this board's been pushing for 6 or 8 months now, and we're just continuing that process, so.
So what you're saying essentially is that when Ed Council identifies these cumbersome policies in the course of doing this work, your task in the scope of this work at this point is just to bring that to our attention, and that we might go back and address that at a later time, but it's technically outside the scope of this work.
What I would say is that what that typically would look like, Aaron, is that we would be conferring with Mr. Pettit, putting, what we think, everything that needs to be in there. And when it comes down to how do we summarize it, how do we scale it back so that it's more accessible, simplified for most readers, that's the conversation at that point.
Okay.
I'm taking that to also mean that we could be looking at maybe an adoption of some different policies to replace some of the policies that we have, maybe by suggestion. It could come out of this.
That's an opportunity,
Right.
but it's entirely up to the board.
Okay. Right, because I'm taking it as you have some other probably policy language or things that, as you said, we adopt a lot of MSBA policies. We tweak the language very slightly a lot of times because we are not attorneys and we don't want to change the scope of that. But as you have that expertise or knowledge, and as Ms. Lance was saying, we don't have lawyers on staff. We want our staff to teach. We want our staff to educate. We want our staff to manage the district, that we outsource what we can do. We don't ask anybody in the district to fix the HVAC system when it goes off. We ask you to change the thermostat, So that's kind of the scope and the way that we work with things here. And we'd like to be able to let our people be experts where they're experts.
Yes, sir.
Do you send a team down? Do people come here and go face to face, or you're doing this all online?
Typically, we will do it. What I would say, Jack, is that there's some in-district time. The board manual would require, meeting with the board, for example. The student parent handbooks, typically we've got to pull by grade level grouping the administrators together to have a conversation. Sometimes we'll do that by Zoom. I wouldn't want to do that here just because I'm so close anyway. It's easy for me to be here. So I would envision having some face-to-face meetings as a part of that. Just so you know, Jack, we don't charge for travel time, so that's not a part of the issue.
He knows you.
So just wanted to get that in there, sorry. It's nice to have the face-to-face on some of these things too. The understanding's much better, I think.
Could we clarify for them, however, so Marshall Public Schools is a MSBA school district, so we pay to belong to MSBA and have their policy written. We as a district don't necessarily pick and choose. It would be a matter of readopting current policies if we were wanting to make them more concise. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean,
As a remaining MSBA school, we wouldn't take some EGL policies and some of MSBA policy.
that's right. And part of just through my experience is that MSBA doesn't really want you to modify their policies. They've vetted those, they feel comfortable with those from a legal point of view. They don't want to customize those. And our approach is different in that regard, and that's why we treat it a little bit differently.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Martin. We've had a motion on the floor that is moved and seconded. I'm going to move to the question. All those in favor of bringing on Ed Council to work with our handbook as we deem to have, whether that ends up with 4 handbooks, 6 handbooks, or 8 different handbooks as they go through it. And please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? We look forward to working with you, Mr. Martin, and your teams. Thank you. Next, I'm going to move to look for the approval of the physical therapy contract with Fitzgibbon Hospital. This is pretty straightforward, and it was also in your packet as well. If anyone has any questions about that?
Do we have physical therapists on staff? None?
Through the hospital.
Yes.
We don't employ any as such, okay.
I would move that we accept that contract.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. It's a contract that we have also been going, and we appreciate our partnership with Fitzgibbon Hospital, and look forward to still looking into that, it sounds like. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Kind of foreshadowed a vote there, so. But as I said, we value that partnership with the nonprofit hospital in our community and are glad that we can have some of that synergy going back and forth between us, so. Next, we're looking at an additional bookkeeper position. This has been something that has been bounced around for a while, back and forth and getting clarity of it. We did ask Mr. Pettit to look at that when he was coming in, to look at central office alignment, the duties that we had, and a lot of our reports, they have said, you're not missing any money, you're not really doing anything wrong, but it would be a lot better to have other eyes on some of these things. We also need to make sure that we don't have a loss of information as we have different things go on within the district and people moving around as well. So if you have any questions, I will open it up for questions, or Mr. Pettit wants to speak to this position at all.
I would speak to that real quick and then see if there's any questions that follow, but I would say just first that we have an amazing bookkeeper, has been what I've discovered since I've gotten here, who's extremely talented. I'd say primary responsibility that about any employee would agree with me is to say that she takes care of payroll, and if she were to want to ever leave us, which we hope she doesn't, but if she left tomorrow or were sick, it would be a very difficult and arduous task to, without error, carry out payroll. That in conjunction with those internal controls I was alluding to with Mr. Martin, with kind of a checks and balances, if you will, in terms of who touches and deposits money. Dawn's been with the district a long time. I think that her reputation precedes her, but someday, I'm reminded of the George Jones songs, "Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes" comes to my mind. Someday that we are going to have to fill those shoes, and how are we gonna do it? And it'll be awfully hard to fill those shoes with one person. So I think those are the biggest things that come to my mind for why, as a district, we should be concerned to only have one. And it would be best practice to have two, and our risk assessment audit's gonna confirm that, as will, I think, our most recent regular audit and the state audit. I think that they would all say that we need to do that as a district.
We need backup.
Yeah, I would agree.
We need cross-training and backup.
Ms. Perkins as well, we know you do an excellent job in there, and we had also talked, Mr. Pettit and I had talked about cross-training as well, to give a little bit of flexibility within your jobs and within the daily scope of things, how they work in central office as well.
Linda's got 20 years left. She's not going anywhere.
She does. I looked at her when I said George Jones, but I couldn't get a reaction.
I've been one that's been kind of opposed to just simply adding a position, because I wanted to hear specifically, we knew we were going to have change in central office. We needed to identify people in their roles, and I think you've done a good job of that over the summer, the few months that you were here. And with that respect, we knew we needed some cross-training, and I think we've already started some of that. So I'll move that we accept and add a position.
I'd second that, believe it or not.
I've been opposed, but I think we've evaluated.
I did not feel the second coming from Harry on that. So.
Boom. We agree.
Is there any more discussion about that, about this before we move past or vote? No? All those in favor of adding a bookkeeping position to the central office staff, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think that's important, though.
Let's hope the bookkeeper.
Would anybody abstain? Just making sure you guys were paying attention.
Oh, no, we were talking about spending money again.
I know, I have to make sure I center you when we start opening the checkbook back up. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is superintendent evaluation criteria. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped board norms. I already put a check mark beside it,
Nothing
so.
normal about us.
Everyone reading as I try to skip a chapter. Board norms was the next thing. We've talked about those with Dr. Henson in our retreat. We've been presented that document a few times. Mr. Pettit has asked for some feedback on that document. We have had a little bit of feedback on that document, and now we are into kind of a finalized document that is going to start probably the board paperwork that we have, or the board handbook, as we're going adopting some kind of norms and practices for ourselves. So I need a motion to accept those norms.
So moved.
Second. Oh, you can give it to Matt.
There's just a couple of copy editing things that I would want to change, very, like apostrophes, right? And the use of the word employ instead of the word use, stuff like that. Can I make those kinds of changes before we publish this someplace? Do you guys want me to run through all those changes?
I trust her.
Who initially motioned on this? I'm sorry.
Matt Smith.
Matt, would you be fine amending your motion to say with contingent changes of terminology?
Copy
Yes, sir, I
Or
would.
copy edits?
Copy
Okay,
edits.
Copy edits.
Free copy edits?
Exactly. On the house.
I did.
Brad on the second as well? Okay.
Good job, Brian.
All those in favor of accepting the board norms and abiding by those, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Oh, you were smooth on that, Brian. Let me
Thank you.
tell You were smooth.
You like that? All right, next we're going to look at superintendent evaluation criteria. When we first started talking about this, I believe the document had about 7 different areas on it. We had said that we were going to look at a few areas to evaluate Mr. Pettit for the year. One of the which that I got some responses back into me about was about looking at vision, mission, and goals as well. I had a couple of people talk to me about that. And then I also had one about management or overseeing distant practices, policies, personnel, those things. Mr. Pettit has suggested a few of those to us, which included management of organizational systems and also vision, mission, and goals. They have some subsections with them. And then we would look at also collaboration with families and stakeholders. We know as a district we are trying very hard to make sure, and Mr. Pettit and Mr. Rinke are working very hard to make sure that they're touching the community in ways that we haven't been doing in the last few years quite the same way, and making sure that we're bringing people in. Our governance plan talks a lot about bringing stakeholders in and has things built into it to make sure we have other community members being impactful. So anyone has any other areas or any thoughts that we think that we should add, please let me know.
Are we going to change the terminology from the candidate to the superintendent, or are we keeping the candidate?
We will amend it to fit our individual as far as typesetting goes. But that would be within his true, when I send that app out, when we actually do that in the winter. So we're looking at the scope of the idea more and the headings that we would like to see, which I believe are all things that we've talked about are very valued to us, of making sure we're touching our community, we're organizing our district better to make us a better working environment and all around working with our community.
How do you need this motion worded? Approve superintendent evaluation criteria based on the 3 goals presented to the board? Is
Second.
that
That will work, yes, sir?
done?
I just needed you to
Third.
say it, Matt.
Third.
Is there any other discussion? I see a look on your face, so.
So the specific language here doesn't, I'm pointing at the document.
Right.
Doesn't
The language
matter?
where it says like the candidate, no.
And
Because it's
CSIP,
actually a
there's
tool.
CSIP in here.
CSIP versus what we're using as governance plan, which actually the MSBA terms are a little bit different than what we've actually used. They still use some of those, reference those terms as well within the MSEP 6, so.
So that doesn't matter. So what does matter?
I would say those highlighted.
The 3 large criteria, and then looking at how we're going to do that underneath. So we are also going to be working with Dr. Henson, so I will email this to him and ask him to send us something that has a little bit better verbiage in it as it equates as well, because he is
Now I
going to be
understand
part
what
of
you're
that
talking about
process.
with the big picture stuff. Okay, so this is really, I think we'll refine down,
30,000 feet.
right? Okay. What, all that time I spent?
Call question.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right. And then selecting a board evaluation tool.
So this cart's kind of in front of the horse because I wanted to let Mr. Martin be able to present first, but if I may just speak to this real quick, it'll be in my presentation PowerPoint here in just a second. But there are 3 evaluation tools for Board of Education to evaluate themselves. Our governance plan, I'm going off memory now, but I'm pretty certain about this. Forgive me if I'm off by 1 month. I believe by October board meeting, you all are supposed to have selected officially the criteria and basically be in the process of your self-evaluation, which also keeps you not only compliant with the governance plan, but it keeps you compliant with the new MSIP 6 standards that you do that. So I went on the MSBA website, and I will put the exact language in front of you in a minute. But there is basically 2 options available for that board self-evaluation tool through MSBA. The first one is $150, and it does not involve anyone in person. The second option is up to but not to exceed $600 for 2.5 hours in person, and they review your self-evaluations. And that literally, and all of these options, that is, in each instance, you will receive an email questionnaire anonymously. You answer the questions without anybody knowing who you are when you answer them, and then this is compiled and brought back to you. Dr. Henson, I reached out to him to say that I would be presenting to you all some ideas for this month because we had a October presentation deadline. That may be a bit too aggressive in the grand scheme of things perhaps, but I'm trying to make it. He responded that he would do 3.5 hours in person. That's 1 hour more than MSBA's, and he also would not exceed $600. So you have an MSBA option for $600, you have a Dr. Henson option for $600, or there's an MSBA option of $150, and there will be no one in person.
Are we obligated to this?
Yes.
MSIP 6 says you
sir.
do have to do something.
Yeah.
Those are the
As-
3 I could
I
find.
always thought the voters evaluated us, that's okay.
That's
So-
true.
So
That's
under,
true.
they will evaluate us as well. So, but underneath the new MSIP 6 guidelines, a lot of things tie back to governance and the board being active within the district and not just ruling the district, kind of are setting policy for the district as well, so.
I like the idea of using Dr. Henson because he sat with us and did the work of the governance plan, and we've agreed to do some things
I
as
do
a whole.
too.
Huh?
I agree with you again.
Dang it, Harry, this is dangerous. And so I would move that we accept to use Dr. Henson and not to exceed $600.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there any other discussion?
Man, I would second that.
I want to see Dr. Henson again, so.
You didn't get to see him last time.
So, all those in favor of using Dr. Henson and the EGL group that we have a working relationship with for a fee not to exceed $600, please say aye.
Aye. We've
Any
still got
opposed?
7,000 we can use tonight.
Are abstaining?
We still have 7,000 we can use.
Moving down, I'm going to move now down to the Superintendent Report and turn it over to Mr. Pettit.
I'm freezing.
I think Jack's having a good influence between us like this, he's having a good influence.
Come to blows if I don't.
Can you hear me okay? All right, my report is not as long as last month. I know you guys have been sitting for a long time, so this, I believe, is pretty quick. But you are certainly, in saying that, welcome to stop me and ask me questions if you need me to explain something further. And I'm going to have to get closer to that to read it if you want me to. But let me tell you this in short. So what I've got going on here in these next few slides, I'll preface in saying this, that the governance plan is absolutely taking, the rubber is meeting the road, so to speak. And you're going to see in the next few slides some of the items related to that. This is our safety and security governing priority, which has been really, really heavy on my mind and heart lately. September is our deadline, and so while it seems that I'm ahead of the game here, to be honest with you, I think I will not be fully on time when this is all said and done, and that's because of the scope of the work. I'd rather be late and have it done well than be on time and have rushed it, especially when it comes to safety and security. I'm not going to read that entire thing to you. It's in our governance plan, which is approved. I want to just speak to the topics here that I have related to it. I have found a group who will not charge, but I think is a quality group, and I'm going to go meet them in person one day. Actually, I meet them in person next week, Thursday, in district. They're going to come to us. Stacy Manhuson is the person who works for this company. They are creating a lot of safety and security audits for districts. Now, the way a company like that makes their money, it isn't to come do the audit. It's to get us to say that we want to use them for how we address that, but we are not contractually obligated to that, and I verified that with certainty, that they're going to be in the district 3 times. I'm going to go visit them some to talk about some emergency response plans they do some reworking of that for districts. But when they come through, they are going to tour our buildings before this month is over. They're going to be a chance for the district leadership to lay out safety and security priorities by building. And it's going to help us to design an overall vision of the district's needs in phases. Because truthfully, there's safety and security needs in any district. Marshall certainly is no exception to that. And there is absolutely, unfortunately, though the cost is potentially in this modern world human lives, but there's also monetary considerations in how you address it. So they would help us address it in phases, phase 1 being the highest priority, and then we would put budgetary dollars behind it. The next step in September will be to schedule a lunch and learn with leadership in the district, such as our IT director. That's their verbiage, so that'd probably be Wesley, actually. Lead principals, front office admins, and facilities directors. They would all meet and talk to them about what they saw, what they didn't see when they came and toured the buildings. And then by October, there'd be another site visit with a more thorough visit to each building based off of everything that they've ascertained as concerns. And the goal is to have a board presentation ready probably most realistically October at the best, which would be in full compliance with our governance plan 1 month late. However, I don't think that we can, as individuals, again, in the district, especially when there's no cost associated with it, assume an analysis on our own and prioritizing on our own. Any questions on that before I jump to a next governance plan item?
No, sir.
Okay. So survey
I saw all the shaking before.
survey questions.
Wait.
Yes.
Just a minute. Aaron had a question or a statement.
Well, so, did you look into any other, because
It's a good question. Like any other firms that do the same service.
yeah, or the TSA. Is it TSA that does the free federal safety audits? You just have to connect it to transportation, but they'll do everything.
I did not, I was not able to myself find anyone else that's worked with an auditor like this that was education specific, so TSA didn't cross my plate. I think that's still on the table, especially once we prioritize phases and you start talking about money. I think that we need to keep doing more homework before we start spending dollars and putting money behind it.
Because the firm you are identifying here is pricey.
Yeah, that seems to be the common theme. It's when you get experts sometimes to come in is that they want to tie a lot of dollars to the actual execution of the phases. I would agree with that. I think at this point I'm just trying to get some expert eyes on prioritizing.
I didn't know they were doing complimentary audits.
It'll be a complimentary audit at some point, whether they stop that process because they want us to commit to things, and that'll be some more board discussions and decisions to make. And that's kind of relevant to some other things we're doing. So you have to navigate tying money behind it, but we're also trying to just comply with expert eyes on our plans too. So no monetary commitment to that yet. Good question. Okay, next item would be climate and culture. This is also a report due to you in October that takes a little planning and preparation. So I'm going to jump into what I'm asking for help with here. We are trying to create a Marshall Public Schools climate and culture survey that we'll send out to the community at large. And specifically, we really want to say that that's for everybody. We've identified we need teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community members to respond to this survey. And we're going to compile those survey questions to share. So my question, and the reason I'm sharing this, is we need that survey to go out by September 20th to be ready to present it to the Board of Education by the October board meeting, because it'll take a few weeks to compile the data and present it to you about where our culture and climate is. I'm asking if anyone has a question they want answered. Obviously, this is open to the Board of Education, but to our community at large. So, for example, hey, we want you to ask, how is the culture of the district as a whole? You know, anything of that nature. We want to hear those questions. So please email me at mpsals.com, You can find that online easily. You can call the office and get it, but we want to hear people's input. Bring it to your board representatives that you know or live next door to. We want to hear about that because we really want a comprehensive survey to give a good look at where people think we are as a district when we present that data, and we can make governance plans. We'll ask that we make plans for how we combat anything negative in the future. Very quick point. So far in the community outreach, the Board of Education, you guys have tasked Mr. Ranke and I with being out in the community. We have been, and for the most part, we will in the long term divide and conquer, so to speak, to make sure that we maintain a presence with community organizations. So far, we've met with the individuals you see there on the left, and I appreciate some of the invitations, some of them from board members, to help me connect with those groups. I'm seeking, I would say, by order of priority, but not everyone. I'm really hoping to make connections with our community hospital, our local banks, our ministerial alliance. We just got that on the calendar today. Chamber of Commerce, City Council, that's on me. They've extended an invite several times, but the start of the school year schedule has conflicted on my end. And then also Missouri Valley, we are looking forward to those. So whether it's board members or community, know that we want to get out there, meet with you. We're happy to come talk about anything you want to talk about, answer questions that you want answered, and maybe even work with you to help with our climate and culture survey, et cetera. But that's where we are in that process.
Has that been going pretty well?
It's been going great. The community has been amazing. The groups have been amazing. The people who have invited us out have been welcoming and warm. It's been really, really great. Okay, another governance plan thing that I'll have to move closer to. I can tell that says 2022, but I mostly know that already. September 2022, our leadership goal. This is to develop a professional development plan for our leadership team in the school district. And again, I'm not reading all those details, but I want to get to the bullet points of how that's going to go. Admin survey. So Mr. Ranke and I called in our admin team, many of whom were not contractually obligated to be here in the month of July, and asked them to come sit down and talk about things to get the ball rolling, so to speak, with the new administration, which they all did very willingly. And by the end of that conversation, we did an administrative survey. It wasn't real high tech. We did a paper survey, and we asked a lot of questions of them about various things to see what their comfort level was or wasn't with stuff, and to find out what their answers were and if they were consistent in their understanding. This is what we ascertained from our administration in compliance with the governance plan. And some of these things you're going to say, yeah, I've heard this before. Safety and security came up as number one from our admin team, that we need work, both in our plans, our procedures, our processes, et cetera. A lot of things that they brought up that was very good information to have, and with perspectives that we couldn't get on our own, especially in July. Bullying, training, and documentation was something they said they wanted training and guidance on. Handbook alignment was something that they brought up in their responses. And that was before all these conversations, I'll mind you. So they were seeing it and asking for guidance, and I'm proud of them for that. They're a pretty great group. They wanted communication protocol alignment. Internal controls, they didn't say it in that way. I'm using my words there. But comments that they made showed that they were wanting and seeking some guidance in budget and district budget alignment protocols. We're working towards that. It's coming. They wanted guidance in our job descriptions, our SRO evaluations, our building schedule alignment, and where and how we supervised with our security officers. Training with fighting and assault, suicide risk, flow chart training and alignment, handbooks and MSBA policy training. So these were things that came up from our initial, very first admin meeting as the new school year admin team. What does that mean for our evaluation plan? First reading, and so I'm proposing this to you as a first reading for board input and guidance before it comes to you to be approved officially. I would propose that it's going to be based on administrator input and board direction under the governance plan, obviously. First way that's going to happen is all administration is going to participate in handbook alignment this school year based on the motion you just approved. So they'll be active parts of that. That's a great training tool for newer administrators. We have a few newer administrators. It's a good way to just learn. Gwen Mundorf, the district's active law firm, has provided in-person training. In fact, just this week, the day before school, Jessica Bernard was here in person from Gwen Mundorf, and she spent a few hours with us going through bullying, the law, handbooks, best practice, assault, intimidation, retaliation, compliance officer, Title IX fundamentals, and emergency drills. we touched on all of that stuff from a 10,000-foot view, dialed it down. Admin team, I told them, I said, I promise I'll never do this the day before kiddos come, but I didn't want kiddos to come and us to, as an admin team, to have not addressed it. So I feel like we're already starting on that. And item 3 that I'll present to you guys after you give me your input is that these and other administrator requested trainings and work will be tied to administrator evaluations, trainings, and support all year, as also directed by the governance plan. In fact, tomorrow, Ms. Jacoby and myself and Ms. Durham and Mr. Ranke are going to spend several fun-filled hours dialing down how we tie evaluation to this, and then we'll probably survey administration and get going with it. So open to any input or guidance on that, but that's things we got to talk about before I bring it to you in a motion so we can approve it. All right. Leadership, create a professional development plan for the school board. That was what we talked about earlier. I said I had the cart in front of the horse. The deadline was September. I said October. I was off by a month. I apologize. This is the numbers. It looks like my numbers were correct. So you all went with Dr. Henson, 3 to 3.5 hours for $600. MSBA's similar version would have also been a total max of $600 for 2 to 2.5 hours. So you're going to get more time, but unfortunately it's going to take more of your time. But you guys have been awesome to be willing to do that. And that is my report for tonight. Any questions or thoughts?
I was scared to say no this time.
I have kind of a comment. As far as the surveys go, they need to be accessible on your mobile devices. That's paramount, because this is what a lot of people use. That's all they have. So, and in the past, we have not had great luck with that.
Okay. That'll be something I'll take note of.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Ranke?
Okay, so I'm not going to take credit for this, but I think it needs to be recognized that we did start school today on time, and I think that is a great thing. Several people before me, you know, there's a lot of people to thank: our staff, our maintenance crew, custodians, teachers, admin, especially in the high school, to be able to make that happen. So kind of a little update on the high school. The kids were back today in the classrooms. It was great to see. The floors are pretty much done. That's kind of what we were waiting on. You know, among many thanks, I want to thank Chris from the floor guys. He spent a lot of time, a lot of late nights in there trying to, you know, make sure that we were good to go. There's some trimming that still needs to be up. We are still waiting on the base molding and some of the bullnose around the island to arrive to get that installed. There's still some electrical work to do, but we can work around that with the kids in there. So,
What's the projection for those things to be done? Any idea?
so no, I do not know.
Okay.
I keep getting the supply chain answer right now.
Sure, okay.
So that's kind of where that's at. But everything, you know, of importance is pretty much set. So
Yeah,
I would
great.
say we're doing well there. So good thing, kids back in school. The second thing I had, I put in your guys' board packet. Felt the need to have a little COVID-19 flow chart. I hate to say it, just giving a little explanation. We sat down, aligned it with the CDC guidelines, the current CDC guidelines, discussed it. We had a our district nursing department had a meeting with them. So the guidelines are pretty basic. You know, stated if you test positive, you should isolate until you don't have fever or symptoms for 24 hours, then you can return to school. It is recommended that you wear a mask for 5 days after you are symptom-free, but that is up to the individual's discretion. If you are close contact, you can continue to come to school unless if symptoms develop, then you can test at your discretion. The school will not be offering the test to stay this year. So our building administration, our building secretaries have that little flow chart. It's kind of pretty simple this year, so hopefully.
I only had a question about the final bullet point under you tested positive, and I think it's just a syntax clarity thing. you can continue to wear a mask 5 more days at your discretion. Does that mean we're discouraging people from wearing masks at all? So you can wear it for 5 more days, but no more, 6 days?
I think
No,
that,
cut
that
off.
says in the CDC guidelines for 5 more days, so it might be just how I worded it, might be a little bit off.
So,
But
and-
no, I'm not discouraged, we're not discouraging anybody,
Okay.
but we're just allowing that up to the individual.
And I'm sometimes obtuse when it comes to following directions. So if you have me in mind as your obtuse audience, if you do revise that, just keep in mind, some people read things sideways. That's
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Fair enough, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, one of the things that kind of goes along with our safety and security is our facility needs. So a couple things on that. We wanted to get a jump start. So we have sent out some a document to our building administration, basically asking them and their buildings to start, what they know is some problems, some areas of concern, to start adding those concerns to this document. It is filling up very quickly, I will say, but that's okay. We need to know about these things to be able to address some of these things. Some of the areas are easily fixed, and some are going to take some long-term planning to be able to address. But I felt, and Mr. Pettit also felt, this was a great way to start getting a grasp on our district needs and moving forward. And that being said, that kind of leads me into, we talked about trying to get a formalized long-range facility plan for the district. We did send out an RFQ, a request for qualifications, last month, for our district. We received one RFQ back from a company called Verigy. Those folders are actually sitting on the table. They're on the ends. And you really don't, we can get that information to you. They only sent us 3 copies. So we can get that in. There's nothing you need to decide tonight or anything. This is just for your information. Now, that is the only RFQ we received back for the one we sent out. And Verigy's a good company, but I would like to amend that RFQ, which I already have, and it is in your board packet also. And I would like to resend that out to try to get some more options for you guys to decide on, for the board to decide on. I would like to get this posted tomorrow and just see what get some more options out there, and maybe some presenters to come in at some point. So there's nothing you need to decide on. I just want to inform the board of that process and kind of how we're moving forward with that right now. That's all I have.
Did you say that you had this electronic and you can send to us?
It is. I don't know. It's pretty big.
It's on a thumb drive, and we can get it on another thumb drive, but it won't attach.
I don't think I can email it to you.
Can you not put it in your Google Drive?
I haven't tried that yet. We might need to find another computer to do it. Mine won't do it.
I'll figure it out and we'll get it to you.
Maybe Wesley, you can help with some technical abilities maybe to see if we can send that out to the rest of the board and check with Mr. Pettit tomorrow.
We've got a
maybe about
computer
that.
on the way with more RAM, but mine just turns on at best most days.
Thank you, Mr. Ranky. Ms. Jacoby, I know you are more than ready.
Okay. Oh, am I on? I promise not to talk too long tonight. I really do. Mr. Pettit had asked that I present on some highlights. There's lots of things going on right now in the district, a lot of really good, awesome things, but obviously we came back to school today. A few weeks ago, we had our new teachers in the district for our new teacher induction. That was from August 8th through August 11th. That planning really happens in the spring prior to the next school year, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of great work. But there's a lot building up to that, and just wanted to highlight some things from those days and from those trainings and just some of the things that we cover to support. Obviously, we want these people that are coming in, a high thing is retention, and we want to make sure that they feel supported and welcoming them into our OWL family. So I'll go quick, but basically, maybe if my clicker will go, maybe. Leslie.
I might have turned it off, sorry.
So the big thing, that's cut off up there, sorry. Welcoming our new OWL family. Obviously, our goal is to make them feel welcome as well as supporting and getting all the policies and procedures in place. And we'll get into a little bit of that later. They do have quarterly meetings throughout the year for extra support. That ongoing support is very important. That we don't just go over that, one time in August, hey, see you later. We're constantly, just like we're providing feedback to students, we're providing those feedback and those constant checks for understanding and checking, with our teachers. So we do those quarterly. That's where we all kind of come together and we meet. They obviously have support every single day in their classrooms with their instructional coaches, with their administrators, et cetera. So this is just a picture. This was actually hosted here at Spainhauer. It was wonderful. This was one that Mr. Pettit, Mr. Ranky, and I thank them for being very present in that and being around and coming and visiting and seeing what that program is really all about. It is really a great highlight, a great program that we have in our district. So the next thing, Wesley, you may have to help me. This thing's still not working for some reason. I don't know why. Did I do that or did you do that earlier?
I did it earlier. Hold on a second. Wrong button. Try it now.
Technology.
Okay. Okay, it wasn't me. Good. Okay, you never know. So the instructional team, we start this in the spring. So what we do is we give, we've already sent the feedback, the survey for our induction. So we send those to all of our new teachers and ask for their feedback. And we sit down and we really look at those. What do you need? What do you need to be successful? What do you need from the district? What do you need from us? What do you need from your administrators? And so that starts in the spring prior. And so, without this team, it's very, very hard to put that on. So I thank them very much for that. And like I said, we started that in about March of last year. One of the big things we do at that new teacher induction is we introduce them to the leadership team. That includes everyone. That's down to Mike Varner. Mr. Varner's there speaking. We have, our director. We have our transportation director. We have all the principals, assistant principals, everyone there. So not only are they being introduced to their own building admin, but everybody in the district and faces. I mean, we are a fairly good-sized district, and it's a lot of people to remember. And so that's really important. They're all there. It's a big collaborative team effort within the district. In regard to that, we have a lot of people involving our staff. There's a lot, I don't know what happened to that slide, sorry guys. Involving our staff, we have the social work team come. They share the community resources. They share everything scenarios. If you have a student that, you're having this going on, here's what you do. We have behavior support and processes. So we involve all of our staff to come in, and a lot of them are coming in on their own time because they care that much to make sure those policies and procedures are in place, that people understand that. That goes down to insurance comes, they do a big presentation. We have, I already alluded to our leadership team. We have CTA, our PDC, our chairperson speaks and talks to them about all of that. We have MSTA, NEA here. Something that we added this year was Mr. Wright came and did some digital communications with us. We are a Google school, and we did a little more support there. And that's embedded with some things that maybe they need to do. So within some of his presentations, we have some things like some open house documents that, to help them through some of that. And so this is it's a very collaborative, thought out, policy procedure as far as, okay, we need to make sure this happens, and here's how we're going to get to that. And we need to make sure this, and it's in place so it continues on. Any questions so far? I'll keep going.
No, you're doing great.
Okay. This is just a picture. This is Jackie Marshall was presenting on some things. I have a ton of pictures. I'm not going to overwhelm you with too many, but not only that, but we go through the critical first. There's a lot to it. I just tried to sum it up very quickly for you. Understanding the protocols down to building tours, helping them where, I know that seems like silly things, but where do you find the copier? How do you get a locked print job? Just little things like that. We do setting up the classroom, predictability, developing those procedures. When we have that and we have that in place, it's very important for students so they know what's coming and what's coming next and how they can be successful in the classroom. You can see we do a lot of training there. We go through their teacher standards as well. And those are also in quarterly, and we're supported, our staff supported through that quarterly too. Help them setting up their curriculum and resources. Where do they go to get that? And we're implementing some new shared drive this year, some better ways to organize that. So, how do we get to that? And with all this, we are always kind of modeling and showing our research-based instructional strategies. So when we're going through something, we are constantly in mind showing them how they can do that with students. And so within all that, they're not just, sitting for 4 days straight. We've got them up and involved as we're hitting all of those critical firsts and modeling what that would look like in the classroom, and then talking to them about that. Hey, did you notice how we did that when we transitioned to this? That's something that you can do with students, and here's why it works, and here's why it keeps them engaged. And so that's constant throughout that. It's really awesome to see. So these are just some activities they were doing. We did a big pre and post test, as we would do with our units of instruction with students. Some hexagonal thinking, and did that at the beginning and then at the last day, and it gets some great conversations going with them. So not only do we do everything to get them, what's going to be successful, how are we going to, get you ready for that first day. We always we did something a little different this year. We did a goose chase, community scavenger hunt. You never know how that's going to go with technology, but it was great. It worked out really well. It was actually through an app called Goose Chase. And they went around to the community, and they found different places in the community, as well as our school buildings and where things are. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what if people are from Marshall? Okay, born and raised here, came back, my husband and I, to raise our kids here and contribute and be back in the community. We know where everything is. Well, I will tell you, I had no idea where to get a car at the bus barn the first time I needed to get one. And so we do, there are some things that we think about, they're going to need to know how to do that. That's included in the Goose Chase. I think we made use to stand at the bus barn, didn't we, Daniel? Yeah. So our PDC members are really helpful to us, and we have them at all the locations. And so those are some friendly faces that they come on their own time and help us with the Goose Chase, so as well as the administrators too. So Sonic was great. I want to thank them again. They gave all of our new teachers coupons, and you can see them there. They're ordering drinks. So that took about an hour, a little over an hour, so pretty quick, but they really enjoyed it, and they had so much fun. We did it on the second day this time, and they all wore their new Marshall shirts, and it was just really neat seeing them around the community. There they are in front of Valley and the Y, and so, and there was a lot of people that aren't from here, and so they really enjoyed going around. They even got Mrs. Perkins out of central office there for a picture, so.
Wow.
Yeah, she was excited, I know about that. So, yeah, there they are at the pool, and it's a team building thing too, and they get to know other people, not just mainly in their building, but around other places. So I'll end on this note. I just have a couple little things here. When we do our induction feedback, because we very much value that, because we want to make sure that we're supporting our new teachers and all teachers. And so I just included a couple slides from 2 of our new teachers with some things that they put in there. And this was one that they provided to Mr. Wright. The survey is anonymous, so they give us their honest feedback. But this was one that a teacher shared with us, and then one from our Career Center as well. So that ends my presentation. I just really wanted to highlight some really cool things that we do to support teachers. There's a lot of thought put into it, and we really value their feedback as far as how to grow or how to make that better every year. So if you guys don't have any questions for me, I will turn it over. Or anything. Yep.
I got to ask you a question. You've been in this role, this is your second year.
Yes.
So I just want to say to the Board of Education and brag on you and our instructional coaches, these teacher shortages and our principals who filled those gaps for us worked really hard. From the time we got here, we had a meeting about how are we going to fill these positions. We want in-person learning. We don't want online learning. And when I watched Ms. Jacoby's induction program, how you hire and start your people, I think is huge for retaining them and keeping them and making them a part of your community. It was a job better done than I've ever seen anywhere I've ever been. It was amazingly done by you and your leadership and everybody, so kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wish we'd had something like that.
And last but certainly not least, Mr. Wright, please enlighten us.
Good. You turn this off?
No, it's on.
Okay, then. Is that what my voice sounds like?
Same as last time.
Good evening, everyone. I am super excited to talk about some communications in our district. So first, let me say that it's always induction that kind of gets us started. And I love getting to come out and be like, hey, guys, just hit me up with an email. I will put it on the internet. You guys are great. And thank you to all those teachers who volunteered to do that. I never forced anyone. I just kind of sat in the back of the room and said, I'm here with my computer. So once again, thank you to all of our new teachers for being a big part of that. So tonight I'm going to talk about 5 quick things. Goals for communication, our ThrillShare platform, digging into our alert system, our website app and Facebook, where it is, where it was, and where we're going with it. And of course, moving into our communication plan, phase 1, which is being presented in October, correct?
I believe that's right. Yeah.
Perfect. So a while back, we kind of discussed what our goals were. And we're looking from a view that's way high up, higher than I thought we could look at this district. And it's really high up, and I'm seeing a lot of things, which is amazing. Another big point is we want to use our voices in the community. Let people hear what we have to say. Tell our story. Make sure that we're showing them all the amazing things happening in this district. And also, on the other side, making sure we're communicating 2 ways, a 2-way communication plan, so that we can see where the holes are, so we can fill those holes and make our district amazing for everything. Utilizing all of our resources. We have a lot of resources that I've been like, we have this, but now we're actually utilizing it. And a lot of our community is starting to see a lot of the things that we have in our district, and I'm hopeful that they are enjoying what we have to offer. And of course, our end goal is to create this communication plan. So here's Jenna again. Jenna and I have been in meetings several times in the last month, at least once each week. This is the first week we have not, well, actually we emailed this morning, but still Jenna has been a big asset to our district. She's been working on a bunch of feature requests for us. Right now they're working on a feature request on our homepage of our website. At the bottom, we have a new teacher spotlight that I put together. I don't know if anyone's seen that new one yet, but they're working on making some visual things change a little bit so it looks a little bit cleaner and nicer. So she helps us a lot with ThrillShare. And today I really want to talk about the ThrillShare platform so that everyone here and everyone online, anyone in this district knows what we can offer. So what forms of communication do I, Daniel Wright, manage? So number 1, we have the directory. And I love our directory because in our directory you can filter it down to a grade level, to a certain area, to administration. So people can see exactly what the teams look like, which is a huge thing. It works amazing on our app, which I want you to download. I want to say that 3 more times tonight. The next thing is our documents. And when I believe in your board report, you saw all the things all the numbers that we have. Documents is a very high, there's a lot of people who like to go through our documents and say, hey, okay, read our board minutes. They like to see our agendas. They like to see our plans, our curriculum. There's a lot of things out there people love looking through. It's organized the way I organize my Google Drive. So it's in folders and then inside another folder. So it's like really organized. And then the old stuff from previous years are in old folders, and we have new folders that the old folders set inside, so it's easy to find. But that's how I like to do it. The next platform we use to communicate is our live feed. Our live feed's kind of like a scrolling bar on our website, but this is mainly what pushes out to Twitter and to Facebook and ultimately one day Instagram at BMS. So those are kind of those short posts you see on Facebook every day. All those graphics you've been seeing that we create, that is all through live feed. And of course, we can post directly to Facebook also. Our news articles are longer articles like board meetings. You'll see as soon as we get the minutes from this meeting, you will see another news feed that goes out tomorrow. And then the next part is probably our most tricky part right now, is our events, our schedules for each goal. So we have a district calendar, we have a building calendar, we have a high school one, a career center one, middle school, and elementary calendar. And we also have the Northwest calendar too. And those all push out to the website. They're merged on the first page and there's individually on the individual building pages. And that's a really great way for people to have just a calendar list, just like you can export to your own phone, or once again, you can download it on the app and you can see it there. And finally, the biggest beast of them all, the alert system. Now, we do have owl alerts using Textcaster. This is a service that is included with our ThrillShare purchase. The Alert Center has 4 main functions. We have an SMS text system, just like Owl Alerts, the same exact function. We have a text-to-speech call. This is where you type the words, and then it is sent out with what I refer to as a robocall. Now, there's a lot of things we're not using that, but I will say one advantage to that is it will translate to any language we would like. That is an advantage, but also that's not our voice. That's the voice of someone who's not us. So moving on. Voice call, which every single one of our administrators has done testing, has sent out a voice call. So we are working on everyone getting a voice call to hear what it sounds, to have an example of what it sounds like. That made no sense, gonna move on. Every single administrator sent out a message to their buildings the day before open house to say, hey, we have open house, come by, drop off things, we can't wait to see you. They did tests, every test included me, so I got lots of phone calls, and they were really great. There are some functionality things I'm working with Jenna right now to correct. Number one, we want to make sure that all of our voice calls, if they're not picked up, they go to voicemail. And additionally, we added intro messages, so it will say, this is a message from Spainhauer Primary School, so people know what it is. And if they have requested Spanish on SIS, that is automatically translated for them. Now, the system cannot translate your own voice, so we are asking anyone who's using the system to send out a text or an email with that, which will translate to their preferred language.
Question.
Answer.
So we had parents that missed the call, so we're working on that going to voicemail. But if people aren't receiving the call at all, what should they do in order to get added?
That's a great question that I'm going to answer.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
And our last one, of course, is email. They'll get a message from Spainhauer Primary School or Marshall Public Schools with no reply, just some general information. And I'm seeing that those kind of emails are working really well also if we copy that and put it in the newsfeed for that building page. So for example, Ms. Jones sent out a message about, hey, it's time for school. These are kind of some school expectations. I also copied that and put it on the newsfeed and just dropped it right there on the Marshall High School page. That's just a great way to communicate, because there's no way in the world we can over-communicate. No one will ever complain about us over-communicating. Let's talk about the recipients. Because, of course, this is why we test things out. We want to test these things out so we know what's happening before we need to use this for an emergency situation or a snow day. We want to know what it's like when we're talking about just, hey, we have open house tomorrow. So in ThrillShare, it is pulled, all of our data is pulled from our current SIS records. It is pulled directly from there. And every single day at, is it 6:18 or something p.m., our SIS data is refreshed. So every single day it is refreshed. Now, currently in our district, it is not refreshing because during an admin meeting a couple weeks ago, we decided we wanted to take every single phone number and every single email that is in SIS to have access to get ThrillShare alerts. So we're talking emergency contacts, we're talking first parent, second parent, all of that is going to be in the system. So it's taking some time to build out those lists, but under that red box, those are actually our numbers for each grade level and the whole building. This is Marshall High School. So this is what those administrators look at when they see ThrillShare on their side. So those numbers are going to grow because every single phone number and every single email in there is going to be getting these alerts. That being said, unfortunately, we have the ability to see analytics, and there are a number of people with incorrect emails or phone numbers, and I can see who it is. And as of right now, until we get more training, I am sending that list to the building secretary so they can reach out to those people and communicate, hey, this is not working, is there a better contact, or what's the most effective way to communicate with you? So that's really important right now to make sure. And I will say our overall district numbers are relatively low. We only have 107 that bounced back last week after registration. So, and I've already emailed those principals so they know where that is coming from. So inside here, you can actually see the breakdown. Each administrator has the ability to send to a whole grade level or the entire building. We are also working on a staff kind of owl alert, which thank you to all the staff members who have went and filled that out. And that will also be imported into ThrillShare. That phone number is the building phone number. And once again, I am working on getting that to go to voice calls so our secretaries aren't overwhelmed with, I just got a phone call from SPS, what's going on? So we're working on that. And really, if anyone else has any more recommendations, because Apogee is great with working us on fixing these things and making these feature requests happen, just let me know, because if you asked me a year ago, could we do any of this stuff, I would say no. But it's great where we're at compared to where we used to be. Now, let's talk real quick about the website. We've done a few updates to our website. Number one, we've decreased the size of the gallery, but the gallery still does exist. We have a new button display, which you see up there on the screen. That's just kind of some of those really big, important things that people need to know, or high traffic areas. They can change throughout the year easily, just let me know. Here's another great example of a feature request. Building projects, I wanted a hammer. So Jenna said, I want to make a hammer. And then about 20 minutes later, we have a hammer. So it's really great working with them. Also, we deleted any unnecessary pages. With our Google Analytics sheet that you saw, I went through and said, why are these pages not being visited? The reason is they're not needed in our district. So those pages have been deleted, and no one has missed them because they haven't been updated. So they are gone. And then the big thing I worked on right before school started was making our athletics page more accessible and making it very up to date and manageable for myself or anyone else to work on. So you notice that's a big change. And also athletics and activities has been added to this button bar.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So we have parent groups at every age level, elementary, middle school, high school. They're not necessarily school, they're not school run, they're not district run organizations. But for instance, the elementary's PTO, they've had a fundraiser going on throughout, I don't know if that was late July, August, but is there an opportunity for those presidents to reach out to you to get their information put and collected on the website for parents to?
Of course. 100%.
Okay.
And also,
Okay.
I would love to put all the PTO dates in our calendar.
Yes, we need to add those in so parents know where they can go, but even an opportunity for them to push a button, see what specific organizations are doing. It'd be a good opportunity for like the high school's Booster Club just had their annual fundraiser, their golf tournament, to put those numbers on there so people could see, the thousands of dollars that they raised for the district.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll reach out to those people and have them get in touch with you then.
Perfect.
Okay.
drod at marshallowes.com.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
We got
I'm
it.
so excited.
Okay.
Now, so those are the website updates. Of course, here is our app. The last time I checked, we had about 5,000 people on our app, which is good. It's just higher than, it's our most downloaded item in the district, I could say. For those at home, the top one you can scan, that is for Google. The bottom, oh, nope, I said that backwards. The top one is for Apple, and then the bottom one is for Androids. This is the same information on the website, and it's also going to give you all those media things, those big media things I talked about earlier. Moving right along. And we also have a really cool YouTube video about it. Facebook. I know we've talked a lot about Facebook, but we have we have consolidated a lot of our Facebook kind of into these two areas. There are more things out there, and we'll see what fits best coming into this umbrella or what needs to kind of stay in its own area. But right now, all of our elementaries all went to the elementary division, and all of our middle school and high school went to secondary, and of course we kept to Career Center. Now, you got some numbers from me a couple weeks ago, but these are our most recent numbers. Our Facebook likes have gone up crazy. Our elementary is up 540%, and our secondary is up 115%. So we have some really good I guess communication, people are really understanding this is where we're going. So come here. So they're downloading the app. They're going to these Facebook pages. It's exactly what we want right now. And finally, moving on to our next steps. Over the next month or so, we're working on our communication plan. So we have a nearly completed team. We do have a representative from every building in our district, and we're working on getting some various people in the community. And right now, I've been working on trying to find all of our communication tools throughout the district. I've talked to administrators about how they're communicating, how are coaches communicating, how are teachers communicating, how is everyone communicating? Is it one way? Is it two way? What is that relationship looking like right now? So this is our current place. We're in a really good place. Of course, there are things we're working on, especially with alerts, but this is a great time to have those discussions and make everything better. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free. If not, have a great night.
I have one for you as well, Mr. Wright.
Yes.
So I know a few times this summer you came from various places, obligations, certainly not your contract time, and worked with Mr. Ranke and I as well. But I just have to know you're still smiling. So last spring when you were asked to do this, did you know? Because I worried about Mr. Wright. I thought, is he going to be okay if he's going to maybe be the one who's held accountable if the app doesn't work for us? Did you expect it? Is it what you've expected it to be as you've taken this journey?
I think that I've thought about a lot. It's going to sound crazy, but I've thought a lot about what Apogee says about thoughtfulness and really putting effort into something, doing it right the first time so it works for everyone. It is a lot of work, but it's worth doing. Who said that? Was that president? Was that FDR?
That sounds close to something.
Or was that Leslie Knope? I don't know.
Well,
But it is really fun to have these interactions and also problem solve. It's really fun to problem solve and say, okay, I see this problem. How can we make this better? How can we grow this problem into a solution? So that's been really nice. So if the question is, am I overworked? I'm okay.
yeah. I would just say I'm really proud of the work he's done too. A 540% increase in just one of those is huge. It means we're controlling our narrative, and we're not giving any energy to anything that might necessarily say be negative out there, but we're sharing our own message, and we're doing it in a place where people can see it. And I'm really proud of the work this guy's done. He's pretty awesome. So.
Thank you. If anybody needs some graphics, email me. I'll make them for district. End of report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
I appreciate that you're always a bright spot. Your energy has to carry over and touch many people. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never seen him not smile, so
Yeah.
if you do something that makes him not smile, it will be monumental, so make sure it goes on. So make sure you download the app.
Yes.
I'll give you one more plug for that, but it's also a communication tool for us to be like sure we're having that communication, so looks like it's going quite well, and we appreciate your efforts. So with that being said, there are no other reports, and I'm looking to entertain a motion to
Jack Skaggs.
go to Jack.
We've had 2 audits since you started.
July 1, 2 audits. The poor central office staff have had 3 in like 6 months. Yeah.
Can I see them?
Not out
The
yet.
final report for the annual audits around November, the one that we did most recently that you guys approved, that I believe we should be able to have by October at the latest, and I'm hopeful for September.
They're done. They're not completed.
Okay, well, I'm just checking on the status of them.
Yeah.
It slipped by us here.
Yeah, I should have said something. Sorry about that.
Motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
Pursuant to hiring, terminating, disciplining, and promoting. 3, 6 actions or records relating to students, and 13 personnel records, evaluations, and applications.
Second.
Harry?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you all for coming this evening.